Captain Xavier. I'm Chaylo, and I play Captain Xavier here and in various other places. And the story that you elected to hear this time is the Piking of Sir Duncan, which comes to you from my medieval days, back when I did medieval recreation with the Empire of Adria. And Sir Duncan was a knight from Southern California who came up to the north to teach us about war, which was fascinating. The crew was fairly well known at that point, I think. This was years after we had crucified Sir Dorn, and we had already put one emperor on the throne, and he'd gone back with tales of me and my private army taking on the combined armies of the Northwest and winning. The emperor or the man who was running for emperor that we were hired by had come up the year before. That was the one that I think was in the last story, who came up for a banner war, for the War of the Mercenaries, and had seen us in combat and had once again remarked that we were actually soldiers. We had a proper NCO corps, we had marching, we had drill, we had uniforms, we had an actual military encampment, we had all of that. So that was fairly well known. So for Duncan to claim that he was going to come up here and show us how war was fought was amusing. I'm not sure how much of that was tongue-in-cheek and how much he really thought we just didn't know how to fight. But he was supporting the Borgia. There was a Borgia who was running for Empress, which I can't imagine why anyone would choose that name for their persona, but I was playing a pirate. Who am I to judge? We were supporting the other side, and this time our opponents were not so outnumbered that they had to surrender. The previous year, when we put Lapse on the throne, we had outnumbered our enemies 36-1. And they had to surrender. If you're outnumbered by more than 5-1, you're not allowed to actually fight. You have to surrender, and then they just divide up the sides and they have a fun war. But this time we only outnumbered them 3-1, and so they elected to murder. They elected to fight, which was a good idea because there are certain points that are won during a war where numbers have no effect on them. There are champions battles, which are a one-on-one fight. You send a champion, they send a champion, whoever wins get the points. There's the same thing for archery, and there are similar things in arts and sciences. So even if you're horrifically outnumbered, if you happen to have 1 or 2 or 3 really skilled people on your side, you can still take some of the points. And that can make all the difference in a really closely contested war, which this one was very closely contested. Just like when Lapse had fought, it was contested everywhere but in the Northwest. Here it was contested everywhere as well as up here. And so they opted to fight. They knew they were going to lose the combat because they were up against the crew, but they were hoping they might be able to get some of the archery depending on who sided with them. There were some really good archers that may have gone on their side. There were also, of course, arts and sciences, which can always go one way or the other, but they forgot that they were up against, me and the gnome and my squire and some incredibly skilled artisans who just blew them out of the water. But Sir Duncan heard, that they were going to be outnumbered up here in combat and that they were up against the crew, and he decided he was going to come up from Southern California to teach us all how to fight, I guess. It was kind of surreal reading the board going, who is this guy? Apparently he was well known, an excellent duelist, but not a soldier. And in wars, you need soldiers, but he was going to be fighting as their champion, so maybe he'd be able to take on our champion and win. He wasn't able to, but you never know. There was a champions battle for all 3 levels of combat for Shinai, Rapier, and Steel, and so, he might have been able to win one of them. I don't believe he did. I took the Shinai and the Rapier, and then I had my Lance Corporal Bowden, Celt's Bane. I let him take on Sir Duncan because Celt. It was amusing. But the Piking in particular was my favorite part. Now, when we rolled up to this event, we rolled up with a 40-foot or 20-foot moving truck with all of our gear in it, our castle, all of our armory, all of that. Started getting all of this set up. And I see somebody swaggering across the field towards me, and I look to my sergeant and go, well, that's gotta be Sir Duncan, and I'm not gonna like this guy. And I didn't. He came over and was all swaggery and boasty, and I think most of it was all in fun and play, but it was still kind of, I'll hit you in the junk tomorrow. I didn't actually think that, but it would have been funny if I had. Anyway, we take the field the next day, and we absolutely wipe the battlefield with them because we outnumbered them 3-1. I think they had 3 fighters in steel. We had 9. Or 10. We organized into 2 squads with shields and halberds and pikes, and it was just an absolute slaughter. But there was one particular instance that just made me happy. I went pike. I had the 10-foot pike so that I could, direct from behind, as is my wont to do. Broke into 2 squads, went around either side of the enemy's wall.
Right squad, take the right side. Left squad, take the left. On the flanking.
The 3 of them decided to then rush one of the 2 squads. They were still outnumbered, 5-3, but they had a better chance than taking on all 10 of us. So they tried to rush that one side. Two of them got cut off and taken out fairly easily, and Duncan tried rushing Keltsbane, Bowden, who had a halberd. Now, Duncan was probably 5'6", maybe, actually, he was probably less than that, 5, I don't know. He was a short man. Bowden's like 6'8". He's a very large man. Duncan had a good-sized shield, but a short sword, because he's a sprinter. He likes to get in close and fight up close with a short sword, which is a good tactic for somebody that size, honestly. Bowden was using all of his advantage. He went with a halberd, and the amount of reach that he had on Duncan was just comical. It was like when the adult holds the little kid's head and they swing at them ineffectively. He just kept poking Duncan's shield so that Duncan could not possibly get close enough. And Duncan's trying to rush him as fast as he can, because if he can get past the head of the pike and can get in close, he has a chance of winning. But Bowden knows how to prevent you from doing that. Keep poking at him with a shield and retreating as needed until support can come up. And I did. I came up on Duncan's blind side because he's right-handed, so he had his shield up and is trying to focus on Bowden. And I come up in his blind side where his shield is, and with my 10-foot pike, and try to go up under his shield to get him in the stomach. But he rushed at exactly the wrong time, and I didn't get the pike all the way up, and I drilled him square in the junk. Apparently I actually hit his left thigh, and it went up under his cup. And it turned his legs off, and he just went down, and it looked like this. Let's see that again. And again. And again. And again. And again. Oh, it's never gonna get old. And, yeah, they had to call a hold, make sure that he wasn't seriously injured. He rolled around on the ground squeaking, "Well struck, my lord! Good hit!" Can I get my pike back? I need to go kill the rest of your people. And we went on to slaughter them all.
Riders ready.
Give me hard to This is all don't get me wrong. Whoever did it, good on them.
Bowden then challenged him in the Champions Battle and felt a little cheated because Duncan was obviously not at his prime, having just been junk shot. So Bowden won that. They didn't. I don't know how many points they got. I think they got a couple, but they did not get very many. We took all of the combat. Pretty sure we took all of the archery. They may have gotten some arts points, but it was a pretty rough slaughter. And then the next day, we had the one-on-one tournaments, because they always have an Imperial tournament where you can earn your points towards knighthood and all of that. And Bowden went up against Corporal Francis, known as Avalok's Bane, and Francis took the field with a bill. And those are just mean looking. And he ended up losing to Duncan, but the very first shot he got was right to Duncan's junk, and just down he went. Turned his legs off as he's sitting there on the ground squeaking, like, again? Why? And I'm on the sidelines watching this. Pirates! No! He did manage to pull himself together, and he did go on to defeat Corporal Francis, but he then ended up meeting Keltsbane in the final and lost to him again. And again, Bowden felt slightly cheated by the fact that he got him, again, not at his prime. He'd heard all these stories of Duncan being a great duelist, a great tournament fighter, and then he never got to fight him when he hadn't just been hit in the junk. So that was a disappointment for the Keltsbane, but we all found it absolutely hilarious. Duncan learned an important lesson about bravado when going to ward against someone with levels of Bard, because we won't just defeat you, we'll sing songs about it later. So I composed this little ditty. Brave Sir Duncan went to war. He boldly went to war. He swore that he would slay us all, but ended up with bruised ball. Said that he would take the day, but in the end he limped away. Brave, 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 brave Sir Duncan. We slashed his schlong, we dashed his dong, we hammered his prick, we dashed his dick, we jabbed his junk, his high hopes sunk, as verily we stabbed him in the cock. And that's what happened to Sir Duncan. Good times. We ended up with a motto, which was, if you come to the north and you act like a prick, we are going to stab you right square in the dick. And, people haven't come to visit near as much as they used to. Alright, so for next time's stories, we'll start with, the runner-up from last time, which was when, myself and Sergeant Major Kyle learned robotics and made the little I-Ted boys cry. Good times. Second option will be the first Scots Raid War. I don't think I've done the first Scots Raid, which then leads beautifully into the second Scots Raid. Some wonderful tales from the first Scots Raid of the rivalry between Sir Stephen and Sir Hamish, which were like kind of a balding, bearded version of Abbott and Costello. Good times. And last but not least, I'll tell the story of the last Afterworlds, would be the final option. Since I didn't get any video footage of it, I'll just tell the story as part of a story time. So, those are your three options. Survey will be down in the description. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, if you were at any of these events and you remember them differently, keep it to yourself. I'm telling the stories here. And, thank you for watching.